Okay, so good morning and welcome to the 2014 BrockU University Sport Management Professional Development Conference. My name is Brendan Kane and this is Kimmy Lennon. We, as well as Dr. Stevens, compromise the organizing committee for today's event. It is our pleasure to welcome you. First, I'm going to share a quick story about my experience as in the professional development conference as a first-year student. So it was only 2 years ago when Kimmy and I were 1P94 students. I enjoyed the conference, but I did not fully embrace the experience. I showed up for the first day, I listened to speakers, and I left without any attempt to make any connections. It took me a better part of the year to realize I made a mistake, so I decided to volunteer last year as a second-year student for the event. I took advantage of the event this time, not only helping out any way that I could, but also making connections that I still use today. And that leads us to today. Kimmy and I are here co-chairing as a part of our 3P02 field placement course. And as much as we are here to make sure the day runs as smoothly as possible, we are also hoping to connect with our industry speakers as much as you guys should be. The lesson I'm trying to express is that it would be in your best interest to make the most out of your day, network, make connections, keep in contact with the industry speakers because it may benefit your career in the near future. So we have a few housekeeping items to address before we get started here. First, there'll be snacks, lunch, and snacks, tea and coffee served throughout the day in here in Isaac's. Lunch will be served from 12:15 to 1:15. If you submitted dietary restriction information as requested to the event, please see Kimmy to follow up on that. Everybody's been given a lanyard and their own personalized name tag. You're allowed to keep personalized the name tag, but we need the lanyards back at the end of the day. So Dr. Stevens, Kimmy, or I will be happy to take the lanyards from you guys. And each student received a schedule from Dr. Stevens prior to the conference. So the schedule and speaker lists are also posted on Sakai for reference throughout the day. And we will not have print copies for you guys, so just refer to the online schedule. We also have, outside the breakout rooms, is the schedule as well. So, Mr. Trevor Whiffen will start off the day as our keynote this morning. Following Mr. Whiffen's presentation, we'll head to the back of Thistle corridor for a breakout session, which will happen throughout the rest of the day. You're free to choose a breakout session, but please note we will direct students into rooms to ensure balanced attendance. And the schedule, like I said, is posted outside the room. Following the end of the breakout session in the afternoon, we'll meet back here for a networking session in which you should have questions prepared for the industry leaders you're going to meet with. Your questions are also important for the breakout sessions at the end of them. In fact, so please note there's no cell phones, electronics, any iPads or anything. Everything's pen and paper. You guys got the portfolios at the start of the day, so please be sure to use those. And throughout the day, Sport Management Department's Twitter handle @BrockSpima will be live tweeting. So use the hashtag SpimaPD and be sure to follow along, retweet, favorite, and post your own tweets about your professional development conference experience. And our final item is a big thank you to each and every industry speaker who took the time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. Your insight will provide information about what it takes to enter the sport industry and achieve professional success. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Kimmy to introduce our keynote speaker, Trevor Whiffen.
Hi, good morning, and thank you all for being here. We are very excited to get the ball rolling for this event and to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning. So he has developed a very busy litigation practice with an emphasis on sport and entertainment law. He has represented several professional athletes, coaches, media personnel, hockey publications, as well as sports teams and leagues. In addition to being a lawyer, he was one of the founders and owners, along with Don Cherry, of the Mississauga Ice Dogs of the Ontario Hockey League, and is now working as governor of the London Knights. He's also partnered with Brian Burke, who is currently working as president of hockey operations for the Calgary Flames, and Prime Sports and Entertainment, which is a sport marketing and consulting firm out of Toronto. He's also president of the Expertise Marketing Inc., which is a sport event and marketing firm also based out of Toronto, and is currently working as a partner at Dickinson Wright Law Firm. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage Mr. Trevor Whiffen.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Kimmy. Thank you, Dr. Stevens, for inviting me to come here today, and welcome to all of you. It's always an honor to come and speak to students at Brock University. I've had the pleasure on a few occasions, and it's always a great opportunity to share thoughts and ideas with other members of the sports management community. Over the years, I've had lots of opportunities to speak to students, whether it be law, business, sports management, and I've come to the realization that even at a young age, students are some of the brightest, most energetic, and passionate people on the planet. Students are current with their knowledge, they ask great questions, and they always want to learn. One of the things I love about talking to students is that they're never afraid to ask a tough question or a question that they think might embarrass them. As we get older in life, we sometimes don't want to ask questions for fear of looking foolish at our age and not knowing the answer. But students seem to be unaffected by that and typically ask great questions because they are current with the knowledge that they're getting at school. As Kimmy indicated, I'm a lawyer by original training, but before I became a lawyer, I was first and foremost a very passionate sports fan. I guess sports was number one and entertainment was 1A for me, or 1B. So I'd like to begin, and the challenge that I had as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old was thinking, how do I get involved in the sports and entertainment industry? I thought I was a pretty smart guy, I was a good student, but I didn't know how to get an introduction or an entree into the sports and entertainment business. So I'd like to start today by congratulating each of you for already taking that first giant step in your sports career by being admitted to the best sports management program in the country. And what a great time to be entering the world of sports. The sports industry in North America has, in my opinion, never been more robust nor vibrant. Literally billions of dollars get spent each year across North America in sports transactions in an industry that promises to just keep growing. And excuse me, and I want to give you 3 examples of segments of the industry where you can see that type of growth. First of all, in the broadcasting field. In 1984, which seems like a long time for you guys because I'm sure none of you were alive then, but for me it's a recent memory, TSN went to the air as the first and only dedicated sports channel in Canada. At the time, many experts in the industry questioned whether or not there was sufficient content and demand to sustain a 24-hour pure sports network. Well, as you all know now, TSN flourished and spawned the creation of a competitive network in Sportsnet. Together, they now each have 5 or 6 dedicated channels showing a wide variety of program, and the business appears to be very robust. In the last 2 years in particular, sports broadcasting has seen some remarkable deals get done. It wasn't that long ago that the NHL struggled to get a national TV deal in the United States. In 2004, which is only 10 years ago, the NHL accepted what now seems like a paltry $130 million to have their games broadcast in the United States on the Outdoor Life Network and Versus. Who here has heard of the Outdoor Life Network? A few. By 2012, however, only 8 years later, the NHL did a $2 billion deal with NBC, which finally gave the NHL the footprint across many US major markets that they had been seeking for so many years. Of course, this past year, last November, the NHL did a $5.2 billion deal with Sportsnet. Now think about that for a minute. $1 billion is 1,000 million, and this is $5.2 billion. That's a massive deal, and as it turns out, it is the largest, most lucrative broadcast deal ever in Canada, and one of the largest and most lucrative anywhere. So the broadcast business is alive and well at TSN and at Sportsnet. Lots of channels, lots of programming, and of course you can now watch games, watch content on cable, satellite, your computers, tablets, and smartphones. The future of broadcasting in the sports world indeed looks bright. Let's turn now to franchise values and locations as another example of growth. In the year 2000, the Columbus Blue Jackets entered the National Hockey League for an expansion fee of $80 million. At that time, that kind of money was unheard of. Fast forward 14 years, $80 million in 2000. Fast forward 14 years, according to Forbes magazine, which is the expert on all matters financial, who very closely and carefully study the sports business, the average NHL team is now worth $416 million. And of course, our beloved Maple Leafs lead the way at $1.15 billion. That's their value. That's 14 times the value paid for the Columbus Blue Jackets, which in 2000 was a high watermark for expansion fees. That's massive growth. Earlier this year, the New York Islanders, a team that play in an antiquated arena that was built 40 years ago, before sparse crowds, with weak corporate support, and without a Stanley Cup in 30 years, to their credit, sold for $450 million. Earlier this week, it was reported that the price tag, should an expansion franchise be granted to Las Vegas, would be $400 million. Think about that. Las Vegas, of all places, there's not a single major sports league in Las Vegas, but the NHL is actively thinking about and pursuing and making inquiries about putting a team in Las Vegas. The very fact that they're even thinking about Las Vegas is also indicative of how sports and the sports industry and the sports business has grown. In 1979, there were only 17 teams in the National Hockey League. With the exception of Vancouver and the LA Kings, they were all clustered in the Northeast and in the Midwest. There were no Calgary Flames until 1979. They entered the league then. So in the summer of 79, there was no Calgary Flames, there was no team at Edmonton, there was no San Jose Sharks, no team in Anaheim, Dallas, Phoenix, Colorado, Nashville, Carolina, Tampa, or South Florida. Now we're talking about the possibility of the National Hockey League having as many as 34 teams in only 2 or 3 years. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because this is a reflection of the fact that the sports business is big business. And there's plenty of room for bright, energetic, skilled people like yourselves to find a career and build a career in the sports industry. The third area I'd like to highlight as an indication of how things have changed in the sports business are employment opportunities. Many, many years ago, if you wanted a job in the sports business, you typically studied kinesiology, and you went about finding a job as perhaps a coach, a manager, a scout, an athletic therapist, a player agent, or perhaps a journalist. In the current world, however, there is virtually a job for everyone with any demonstrable skill set. Consider Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which is one of the largest sports and entertainment conglomerates in the entire globe. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is not unlike any other large corporation. Yes, we think of them as playing 41 home games a year, the Maple Leafs, and they've got the Raptors and the Marlies, but they are a massive corporation. Yes, they still hire coaches, they still hire scouts, managers, and athletic therapists, but they also hire full-time lawyers, accountants, corporate finance experts, facilities managers, event managers, public relations staff, sales experts, marketing people, construction managers, and of course, in recent years, an entire social media department. And this summer, they hired a salary cap expert, Brendan Pridham from the NHL, and they added 3 experts in analytics, the newest area of growth in sports, analytics. So that's a lot of different areas where you can find a home in the sports business. You know, when I was your age, you thought about being a general manager of a team or a coach or maybe a player agent, or as I say, being a sports writer. Now the world is your oyster, and there are literally an unlimited number of opportunities for you. The Leafs, of course, or MLSE, also has their own television network covering the Leafs, the Marlies, Toronto FC, and the Raptors, and they have their own charitable foundation. So whatever skill set you possess, whatever career aspirations you have, you are able to fulfill them in a corporation like Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. But more importantly, those opportunities are replicated in multiples of businesses throughout North America. The group that you are part of, first-year students here at Brock in the Sports Management Program, you represent the future leaders in sport. And in my opinion, you are so fortunate to be able to study such a fascinating, career-driven curriculum led by passionate, knowledgeable, insightful professors that will give you the academic background, and foundation that you need in order to pursue a career in sports. I'll pick up on what Brendan said about making the most of today. I would extend that and say, make the most of the opportunity you have during your 4 years at Brock. A good education is the best building block for a career in sports, or in any career for that matter. So where do you go from here? There's no question that there's no easy road or well-defined path to follow in finding a sports job. It's easy in things like accounting and law because everybody knows what the process is. You graduate from law school, you article, you get called to the bar, you practice on Bay Street or in communities throughout the province of Ontario. Easy to identify. Not so easy with sports. Indeed, in sports, the career path is anything but a straight line. It will sometimes seem overwhelming when you think about what you're going to do. It will sometimes perhaps seem unattainable. I'm sure you will ask yourself along the way, how will I get there? When will I get there? Will I even get there? And what do I do next to make sure that I do get there? You're already on the right path. You are doing something that you are passionate about. In his commencement speech to Stanford University in 2005, Steve Jobs of Apple fame talked about the need for young people to embrace their passion, do what they love, and find a career that is fulfilling, not just something that pays the bills and occupies you for 40 hours a week. Follow your passion and do something that you love to do. Mr. Jobs also talked about the challenge that faces young people, and I'm paraphrasing partly, but this is largely his quote. He said, "It is impossible at the age of 22 to look forward and connect the dots in your future. But believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence you need to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that belief that you will connect the dots will make all the difference in the world when you are pursuing a career that you love." Don't worry, you will all connect the dots, but as Steve says, you can't do it in advance. It's easy for me to do it now because I've been in the workforce for a lot of years, but you will connect the dots. I've had the privilege over the years to meet a lot of successful people in the sports business, and without exception, their career paths, their success was not pre-planned, nor preordained, nor did they choose the path well-traveled. The advantage you guys have, of course, is that you're actually in a sports management program. In my day, when you got out of university, or got out of high school rather, and were contemplating curriculums at the university level, there was no sports management program. There was nothing even like it. Typically, if you're good in history, you studied history. If you're good at applied science, you studied applied science. You are so fortunate to have a career-driven, dedicated program that you can rely upon for your education. So that's one advantage you have over people from my generation. But coming back to the people that I know, it's never been a straight line. There's been curves, hurdles, and challenges, but everyone is also granted opportunities or faces opportunities, but you have to also recognize the opportunities. And I'd like to share with you briefly the career path of two friends of mine that were anything but typically conventional, but somewhat typical in the sports business insofar as they seized opportunities and ran with it. The first person I'd like to speak about is E.J. McGuire. Now, put your hand up if you know who E.J. McGuire is. One person at the back, and you're not a student. That's not fair. E.J. McGuire. Well, let me tell you about E.J. In the early 1980s, E.J. was studying towards his PhD in sports psychology at the State University of New York in Brockport, where he was the coach of the school's Division III hockey team. A call came in one day to the school's athletic department looking for a volunteer statistician for the Rochester Americans of the American Hockey League. The Rochester Americans were being coached at that time by a gentleman named Mike Keenan. Anybody here heard of Mike Keenan? Many of you. Good. Well, rather than assign that statistician's role to a graduate student or one of the players on his team or anybody else that might be interested in hanging out with the Rochester Americans, E.J. took on that role himself, even though he was a full-time coach at Brockport and was studying towards his PhD. EJ recognized the potential of that opportunity, and as good luck would have it, 2 years later, Mike Keenan was hired as the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers of the National Hockey League and took EJ Maguire with him. During that 2-year period that he'd worked with EJ, he realized what a brilliant mind EJ had, what an astute observer he was of human behavior, how technically proficient he was in understanding hockey, and they got along. In fact, at EJ's funeral 3 years ago, it was Mike Keenan that gave the eulogy, and for those of you that have heard of him as Iron Mike, you'll be surprised to hear that he had to be brought off the stage in tears, being consoled because he was disconsolate at the loss of EJ. But for the next 10 years, EJ Maguire served as an assistant coach for first the Philadelphia Flyers, then the Chicago Blackhawks, and then the Ottawa Senators. He later moved on to become the director of player personnel for the New York Rangers. And for the last 6 years of his life prior to succumbing to cancer in 2011, he served as the vice president of the National Hockey League and director of scouting for the National Hockey League. That to me is a classic sports story and a great story. EJ saw the opportunity, he seized it, and he never looked back. In a similar vein, a young man named Kevin Abrams graduated from the University of Western Ontario in the early 1990s with a philosophy degree and a burning passion for football, though he had never competed at the collegiate level. Not exactly the pedigree, philosophy degree, didn't play sports. Not exactly the pedigree you'd expect for somebody who wanted to pursue a career in sports management. After spending a year working at his family's jewelry store in Toronto, Kevin decided to enroll at the University of Ohio in their sports management program. From there, Kevin worked in a series of volunteer positions, first at the baseball winter meetings, then at the NBA All-Star Classic, then at the Cotton Bowl. He eventually secured an internship with NFL Europe, and then another one with the Buffalo Bills. For the last 13 years, Kevin Abrams, from Toronto, Western Ontario grad, has served as the assistant general manager with the New York Giants of the National Football League and has 2 Super Bowl rings to add to that family's jewelry collection. Another great story, and it happened right here in Canada. If you ask anyone involved in sports what they think are the keys to success, you'll no doubt get a wide variety of answers. In my own professional life, there's a series of principles that have guided me over the years. And if you will indulge me for a few minutes, I'm going to take you through those 10 principles that have really formed my career. Think big, dream hard, dare to be different. Probably sounds a touch corny, but think about it for a second. Think big, dream hard, dare to be different. I have tried to live this motto, this mantra, every day. And I've instilled in my kids, believe in thinking big, dreaming hard, and daring to be different. Now, I can't lay claim to this expression myself. I first heard this from James Cameron, the film producer. Now, you may not know, but James Cameron is a Canadian. Who here has heard of James Cameron? You guys now don't want to put your hands up, don't you? No, James Cameron's a very prolific filmmaker. But James Cameron, born in Kapuskasing, Ontario, and grew up just down the road in Chippewa, down near Fort Erie. He never went to film school. He was driving a truck for a living when he saw Star Wars in the 70s. And the movie, with all of its special effects, inspired him to learn everything he could about special effects in the film industry. He was not enrolled in a course at school, but he went to USC, took out textbooks out of the library and read them in the library. He photocopied copies of doctoral theses on special effects in the film business. And over the years, he dared to be different. He believed in himself and he dreamed hard. And this is his expression. And he is really the first filmmaker to significantly incorporate into his films scientific special effects and technologies that had never been used. And of course, if you follow the film industry, and I'm sure you will have all heard of these films, he produced Terminator, Titanic, Aliens, Avatar, among many others. all huge box office hits, and is without a doubt the most prolific filmmaker in the history of Canada. Ten years ago, Kyle Dubas sat just where you guys are. Kyle was an 18-year-old student in the sports management program here at Brock University. When Kyle departed with his degree, although I didn't know him at that time, but I've since become friends with him through our connection, mutual connection through the Ontario Hockey League, I know looking back that Kyle thought big, dreamed hard, and dared to be different. After leaving Brock with his degree in hand, he became the youngest certified player agent in the history of the National Hockey League. At the age of 25, 3 years ago, he joined the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds as their general manager and was one of the youngest general managers in the history of the Ontario Hockey League. And quite frankly, many of us in the league at the time thought, geez, general managers are extensions of scouts. You need to see a lot of players play over a long period of time to really know what you're doing. Is this young guy going to be up to the task? Well, he showed us all pretty quickly that he was up to the task. And of course, at the age of 28, he is now one of the youngest ever assistant general managers in the National Hockey League, working, of course, for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I was going to make the comment that he is no doubt become the poster boy for the Brock Sports Management program, but I can see that's both literal and figurative as Kyle's image is up here. So what I want you to think of when you think about your own careers is think big, dream hard, dare to be different. But when you see people like Kyle in the positions they're in, or James Cameron in the film industry, don't assume that you'll never be a candidate for that job, because that's an easy thing to think, I think, when you're a young person. I know, when I was in law school, you get to, like, you've been a great student in undergrad, and you get to law school, and you think, well, everybody was a great student in undergrad, and they're all now here, and it's a fiercely competitive environment, and maybe I'm not going to cut it. Then you get your first job on Bay Street, and you think, maybe I'm not going to cut it. And then you get hired as a partner, and you still wonder if you're going to cut it. You are all candidates for all those jobs. You're bright, energetic, enthusiastic, passionate about what you do. You are all candidates. So when you see people like Kyle, don't ask why him, ask why not me? I'm a candidate as well. So those are the first three bullet points I'd like to share with you. The next one is learn about the business. It's funny, I practiced law by original training, and I still have lots of clients for whom I am not a sports and entertainment lawyer, and whatever I did for them when I met them 20 years ago. And in the legal business, for example, if you get a case from a client that's about a bad batch of ball bearings that they manufactured, and they're getting sued for, shitty ball bearings, they don't expect you to know anything about ball bearings. They expect that they will teach you all about ball bearings, and for some period of time you will be a quasi-expert on ball bearings, and then you'll move on to another case and be a quasi-expert about that. But clients don't expect in law, they expect you to know the law, and they expect you to know procedure, but they don't expect you to know about the underlying industry that they're in. It's different, however, in the sports business, and I've seen this over the years, that when you're talking to a client, if you do not know what's happening in the sports industry, they almost look at you with a sense of disappointment on their face that you're not current with what's happening. A number of years ago, my managing partner came to me and said, we have this hotshot. He didn't use the term hotshot, but clearly thought he was a hotshot. This hotshot from U of T Law, great school, straight A student, wants to be involved in the sports and entertainment business and would love to meet you. Could you interview the guy? Sure. I'd love to meet him. He comes into my office, and the first thing he says is, Mr. Whiffen, I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of ice hockey. Now, I thought to myself, ice hockey? Who calls it ice hockey? Then he says to me, and I know you're on the board of governors of the Ontario Hockey League and you own a team with Don Cherry, and the Ontario Hockey League is a great league. My best friend played in it. And I said, oh yeah, well who do you play for? And he says, oh, I'm not really sure, but I know it's a great league. And I instantly, wrongly or rightly, I instantly formed the impression that this guy really did not understand the sports business, because first of all, we don't call it ice hockey in Canada. That's a European term or an international term. And he couldn't even name the team that his best friend had played at in the Ontario Hockey League, which immediately made me, like as you're speaking to this guy, you're quickly kind of calibrating. Could I put this guy in a room with Don Cherry? Could I put him in a room with Brian Burke or Bruce Boudreau or Rick Vive or Dale Hunter or Mark Hunter or any other people that I'm involved in business with? And would he give a good account of himself? And I quickly decided he would not. He's a straight-A student in law, but he had not been studying the business of sports the way I know all of you have, and I know the way I had, so that when the opportunity presented itself, as it was presenting itself to him that day, they would be ready, or you would be ready, or I was ready. You have to understand the business, and not knowing about the business, in my respectful opinion, can be fatal. Next tip, get involved. Don't wait until you're finished school. Yes, you have a heavy workload with your academic curriculum and the other things you need to do here at Brock. But get involved as soon as you can. Start building your resume and your experience base in whatever you can get involved in. Identify opportunities that are of interest to you and pursue those opportunities. As importantly, identify people that do what it is that you want to do and find a way to work with them. You can volunteer, you can intern, you can attend events that they're hosting or that they're speaking at. You can invite them to lunch, you can invite them for coffee. My experience is that people in the sports and entertainment business, by and large, are happy to give back and happy to share their thoughts with young people that share the same career aspirations that they've been fortunate enough to have materialized for them. So get involved, keep showing up. And it doesn't matter whether you're interning for the Buffalo Sabres, for the Niagara Canucks, for the Niagara Rivermen AAA team, or for the Niagara Ice Dogs of the Ontario Hockey League. Find something that you're passionate about, get involved, and learn. Networking. Now, Brendan mentioned this in the introduction, and it's so important. If there is no message that you take away from today, from my speech, please appreciate the importance of networking, the power of networking, the value of networking. Meet as many people as you can in the sports industry. Like, I feel I am remarkably blessed to know as many people as I do in the sports industry. Knowing people in the industry and staying connected with those people can open doors for you. It can result in recommendations being given on your behalf. And lo and behold, one of those people as part of your network may actually hire you for a position. So network, 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 and never stop. To this day, a part of what I do for networking is when I'm invited to speak, or if I'm asked to be interviewed with the media, or I'm asked by a student to meet and talk about lunch. Or 3 weeks ago, I spoke at the University of Toronto Law School on a Saturday. I always say yes to those opportunities because you never know what opportunities will come of it, what people you may meet, or where it may lead to. And lawyers, and I'll slag lawyers because I am one, but lawyers are always driven by, or oftentimes driven by, and you've heard the expression, billable hours. Billable hours. And Julie and I were speaking about this before we got going this morning, that so many lawyers only look at, will I get $1 out of this activity if I do it tomorrow? And that is such a short-sighted and myopic view of the world. You should view networking as a lifelong endeavor that starts right now, but it will go on for your whole life. And very rarely will you do something today that will translate into a job or a file or $1 in your pocket tomorrow. But the more people you know, the more chances you will have to get files, get jobs, get interviews, and meet other people. So get out there and meet as many people as you can and stay connected with them. The next advice I would have is invest in yourself. Well, you're already doing this by coming to Brock University. And getting a great education is the best investment you can make in yourself, no question. An education is so valuable. The days are gone, like James Cameron did it in the 70s, and the odd person will do it now, but the days by and large are gone where somebody can start in the mailroom and work their way up to being president of the corporation. No, if you want to be the president of the corporation now, you better have an MBA and have an accounting background. So get a great education. That's the first step in investing in yourself. But it doesn't stop when you graduate from Brock. If you're so inclined, consider a graduate degree in sports management. If you're so inclined, consider a degree in law or accounting or business, go do an MBA. Think of other things that you could do to supplement the great foundation you're getting here at Brock in the sports management business, because the more academic training you have, the more appealing you are going to be, and the more points of differentiation there will be between you and the other candidates. You want to distinguish yourself as many ways as you can, and you can do that by the work experience you get and the education that you have. So don't stop investing once you leave here. Keep investing, keep studying, keep learning, take courses, attend conferences, do interviews, and keep networking. If you do all of this, you will build your brand. Building your brand is maybe sounds a little grandiose in a way, but everybody you're meeting, everything you're doing, every educational credential that you are earning, every award you receive, every community activity you get involved in, you are building your brand. Building your brand is building your reputation so that people look at you and see you as somebody who is reputable, experienced, resourceful, and most important of all, reliable. You must be reliable. You want to make sure that when people think of opportunities, they think of you first, and you do that by successfully building your brand. The next piece of advice I would offer is never say no. Never say no to a good opportunity to become involved in something that you're passionate about or you're interested in. Every opportunity you undertake is a building block in that career. And it's easy when you're young in particular to be deterred or discouraged by the fact that you don't have experience in some area and you don't know how to do that. Well, let's be honest about it. None of us knew how to do anything until we did something for the first time. And I'm always astonished in the legal profession, for example, that I have partners that say, oh, I can't do that kind of case, because they've never done it before. Well, when they first were called to the bar, they hadn't done any kind of case, but they were able to learn it then. Why aren't they able to learn it now? So trust in your ability to take on challenges that are things that you have not done in the past, and that you're going to conquer those challenges. So don't say no to a good opportunity. There's an expression. Jim Rooney, who used to teach here at Brock, always used to say it. Jim is a friend of mine through the Ontario Hockey League. He used to say, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. And it's a little bit corny, I know, but it's so true. So believe that you can and figure out a way to get it done. So instead of saying no because you haven't done it before and then living with the regret of not doing it, say yes and figure it out. I digress for a second. My sister is a PhD holding psychologist who specializes in family dynamics, and she has said to me over the years that I am driven by the fear of regret. And I've never studied psychology, not even at Psychology 1A6, so I don't know where that fits in the textbook of psychology, but I do understand what the principle means. And yeah, I have been at times driven by the fear of regret. And the fear of regret has forced me to do things that I didn't want to do. At times I didn't want to do it with people that maybe I didn't want to work with, but invariably the exercise or the experience was great and I was glad for it. So don't live with the fear of regret. Move forward and say yes to those great opportunities. The last bit of advice I would give you for success in the sports business is perhaps a piercing insight to the obvious. Work hard. If you don't know by now, and I'm sure you do, let me tell you that the sports and entertainment industry is not a 9-to-5, Monday through Friday experience. If you work in sports or entertainment, you are working evenings. That's when games are played, by and large, other than on the weekends. But you're working evenings, you're working weekends, you're on call. And I know with our staff with the London Knights, they work all week doing our game day promotions or marketing or ticket sales, and then they're at our games on Friday night and they're at our games on Sunday afternoon, because the sports and entertainment is not a 9-to-5, Monday through Friday experience. And if that sort of experience is what you're seeking, there are still jobs, and I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say any of these examples, but you maybe could do that with the Parks and Recreation Department because it's more scheduled. But you can't do it if you want to work for a team or a league or if you want to be a player agent. There are a lot of player agents who are friends of mine. We've been to Leaf games at night, and we're riding home in the car together, and they're getting called by their client with the Edmonton Oilers who just had a lousy game and got benched. You're on call 24/7 when you're in the sports and entertainment business. Like it or not, that's how it is. It's just a fact of life. And it just comes to be something that you accept. And remind yourself, when you think about not working hard, that even though this is a growth industry, there's still only a finite number of jobs in the industry, and there's lots of bright young people like you who are in grade 12 now, or grade 11, who will be chomping at the bit to compete with you for those jobs. So hard work cures a lot. I'll tell you, if I think somebody has made a mistake, but I know they work hard, I'll forgive them. If I think somebody doesn't give it their all and they make a mistake, I'm not as forgiving. Hard work overcomes a lot, but you will work hard in this industry. But you know what, guys, like, you're doing something you're passionate about. Like, how could you not enjoy going to games, dealing with players, dealing with the media, dealing with the families? Yes, sometimes all those things get tiresome. But when you compare it to a million other careers you could undertake, it's pretty cool to be involved in sports entertainment, and it's pretty fascinating, and you get a blast out of it. I can honestly say that there isn't a single day that I get up and feel bored or don't look forward to the day ahead. I never know what I'm going to do from day to day. I can tell you at the end of the day what I will have done that past day, but I never know exactly who's going to call me, what issue is going to come up, and it's a blast. I love the thrill of not knowing in some ways. I love the thrill of responding to the challenge or the crises that has arisen. But if I thought it was just going to be 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and I got irritated with clients calling me after hours, or having to go to games after hours, or entertain clients or network after hours, then sports entertainment is not for you. Anyways, let me tell you a little bit about my own career path. I think I have had the benefit of a great education. I did a 4-year degree at McMaster University, which was a great school. I did not have a curriculum that was directly applicable to any particular career, but I had a great experience. I matured. I learned a lot about a lot of different things. I developed, I think, good communication skills and good writing skills, and it prepared me for what lay ahead. Of course, I was always studying sports and entertainment as an adjunct to my curriculum, and I know my poor mother would always say to me, "If only you could be so serious about your studies," when I was reciting what was to her meaningless statistics about somebody's goals against average. But I was always, even when I got into law, then I went to law school, so I started off going to Mac, I went to Queens for a 3-year degree, and like 150 people in my graduating class, we all headed off to Bay Street. We all wanted to work at big downtown Toronto firms. And incidentally, I was just saying to Kimmy, we had a reunion of my class this past fall, and of the 150 that wanted to start off on Bay Street at big Bay Street firms, only 3 of us are still working on Bay Street. Everybody else is sort of dispersed to different places. But as a young lawyer, I had a great practice. I was a commercial litigator by original training. Commercial litigation is companies suing companies, so shareholder disputes, partnership disputes, breach of contract, negligence, employment-related stuff. And I love the challenges. I love getting a good result for my client. I love learning. I love competing. Like when you litigate, it's kind of like a sport. You're fighting an opponent. There's a set of rules. There's a referee. They happen to wear a robe when you go to court. But there is sort of a sports analogy with litigating that I kind of enjoyed, and I love the thrill of victory, as we all do when we win. But in the back of my mind, what really was my first and foremost passion was, as I say, sports 1A and entertainment 1B. And I thought, how do I get involved in the sports and entertainment industry? And many people that work with me said, you got to find a way to get involved in the sports business because you're so passionate, you're so knowledgeable about it. And I thought, yeah, I do, but how do you get that break? And I didn't know E.J. McGuire at that time, so I didn't know that opportunities would actually present themselves. But I believed that the dots would connect, and at some point I would get my opportunity. Well, my opportunity came, and excuse me if I indulge a little bit of a longer sort of anecdote about this one, but my opportunity came on a snowy Friday afternoon in February of 1989. That's a long, long time ago, but I've been practicing law for a long, long time. A call came into my office from Hockey Night in Canada. Ron Harrison, the executive producer, was on the line, and the first thing he said to me is, "Are you a hockey fan?" he knew I was a litigator because I was at the firm that did the firm's work. Are you a hockey fan? And I said, indeed I am. I'm driving down to Buffalo tonight with 16 of my buddies to see Mario Lemieux play against the Buffalo Sabres. He said, good, I've got the right guy. And he proceeded to tell me a story about how the Winnipeg Jets were threatening to sue Hockey Night in Canada, CBC, and Don Cherry if Don did not apologize the next night on live national TV about comments he had made the previous Saturday on Coach's Corner about the Winnipeg Jets, who were mired in like back before the days of shootouts and overtime, you could actually have a 35-game winless streak, which they had going. So Cherry was quite critical of them, criticized their general manager who had a PhD in Russian studies, Mike Smith, criticized him for making bad trades, criticized him for firing John Ferguson, Sr., criticized him for hiring, and this was really the hot button item, criticized him for hiring a Finnish coach named Alpo Sahonen. Alpo later went on to coach the Chicago Blackhawks briefly. But the thrust of the complaint was that Don had made all these disparaging remarks, and if Don didn't apologize the next night on live TV, the Jets were going to sue everybody. I'm telling you this story, not, by the way, in breach of any sister and client privilege, because this story is actually repeated in Don's book and in the movie, The Life and Times of Don Cherry, Keep Your Head Up, Kid. This story is told as seen by Don, so it's actually part of the movie, and I actually get featured in the movie, although regrettably they don't mention my name, and I'm portrayed not by Brad Pitt, but by some skinny kid that didn't seem to be very confident, but maybe that's how Don saw me at the time. But in any event, the call came in. I watched the tape about 12 times. I was alone in the office myself that day because it was ski day, and I thought, this is the opportunity. And I'm either going to sink or swim, but I better be right about this decision. And I watched the tape, and how the session, after Don has criticized everybody, Ron MacLean in typical sort of diplomatic Ron fashion, Ron says, well, those of us Hockey Night in Canada would like to wish Alpo all the best in his due job. And Don says, all the best? I don't wish him all the best. Alpo sounds like a dog food. Well, Alpo is a dog food. Truth is a defense. Don is entitled in law to have what are called reasonably held beliefs. Fair comment, it's called. So it's a reasonably held belief. If you think they made bad trades, you're entitled to say that because that's your opinion. So I said, don't apologize. It's not defamatory. It's uncomplimentary. It's unflattering, but it's not defamatory. Don is controversial. I'd never met him at the time. But Don is controversial. If you apologize today, what about 2 weeks from now? What about 3 weeks ago when somebody else comes forward and complains? So don't apologize. And if you're going to apologize on live national TV, and at that point in time, Coach's Corner was always live. Now it's sometimes taped, sometimes live. But at that point, it was always live. If you're going to say it live, you have to say it like you mean it, if it's going to be meaningful. You can't say, oh yeah, and that Finnish coach, so sorry if I hurt your feelings. You got to say it like you mean it. So I said, don't apologize. Well, needless to say, the next day, I wake up, I'm in Buffalo with my buddies, we cross the border, and the national edition of the Globe and Mail says, will Cherry eat crow? Because the Winnipeg Jets have gone public with this issue. And I'm thinking, he's not eating crow because he's listening to what I had to say. So he goes on the air that night, they do their normal Coach's Corner routine, and at the end of it, Ron says, is there anything else, Don, you want to say? And Don looks into the camera, as only Don can, straightens his tie and says, nope. And basically, he was flipping the Jets the bird with that comment. So, that's a long story, but that was my opportunity. I met Don. Don and I hit it off. He called me a couple of weeks after it all sort of settled down and said, hey, kid, it's Don Cherry. I like the way you handle yourself. Would you be interested in being my lawyer? And, I thought about it for a 30th of a second and blurted out, yes. And we met that day, actually, for lunch. And it's been a 25-year relationship since then. We're great friends. I just had lunch with him this past Tuesday. But great friends and a great experience. And think about it. I'm a young lawyer with a couple of years' experience, and my first client in the sports and entertainment business is Don Cherry, the best-known face on Canadian television. What a great place to start. I'm not representing the guy coaching the Chippewa Junior Cs. I am representing Don Cherry. From there, we worked on his Rock'em Sock'em videos, his book deals, endorsement deals, contracts that he had for various things. And then in 1996, he came to me, a long time ago, and he said, how about, well, I'll just go to my next slide. The Ontario Hockey League had made it known in 1996 that it was considering adding some expansion franchises in the Greater Toronto Area. And Don came to me and said, hey, you and I get along, we think the same way. Early on, he had said to me, you know hockey, which I consider to be like the greatest compliment anybody could give me. You know, if my mother said, oh, you know hockey, it wouldn't mean much, right? But when Don Cherry pokes you in the chest and says, you know hockey, that's like, you know, a PhD in sports management equivalent. You know, you are an authority because the greatest expert in Canada is anointing you. Anyhow, Don came to me in 96 and says, the OHL's thinking about expanding in the GTA. Why don't we put in a bid for a team in Mississauga? And I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, I'd never done that before, of course, but I thought, I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm hardworking. I know a number of people. I know about the OHL. I've been kind of, in some ways, preparing for this my whole life. And we were granted a franchise in the Ontario Hockey League for the Mississauga Ice Dogs. For the next 5 years, we ran the Ice Dogs together. Unfortunately, if you're familiar with our team, we were not very good, and I could give a speech about why we weren't very good, but I won't give it today. But we weren't a great team, but for me personally, I served as president of the team. So I ran the business side. I was the governor of the team. Each team in the league has a governor. There are 20 teams in the league. The 20 governors serve on the Board of Governors. The Board of Governors are the governing body for the Ontario Hockey League, as the Board of Governors is for most sports leagues. And for 2 years, I served as a general manager of the Ice Dogs. So, you know, one of the building blocks of my career is that I served as a general manager in the Ontario Hockey League. And not many people can claim that. Kyle Lewis can claim that. Not many people can claim it, and the list of people that have served as general manager in the Ontario Hockey League is small. There's a lot of great people that went on and did great things, and I'm proud to be part of that fraternity. As part of that role, I had the privilege of both drafting Jason Spezza, and then regrettably having to trade Jason Spezza when Jason wanted to go to a winner in his draft year, so we traded him to Windsor. And hey, I bear no malice towards Jason. He was the poster boy for junior hockey for the 4 years that he was in the Ontario Hockey League. Great kid, great family, and he's been a great pro. So the Mississauga Ice Dogs opened a lot of doors for me. Along the way, networking at every opportunity. I met lots of coaches. I met lots of people involved in the sports business, and I was introduced to Scotty Bowman. Everybody knows Scotty Bowman, I'm going to assume. Scotty was at that time the coach of the Detroit Red Wings and was wanting to start a coaches association but didn't know how to do it. Now Pat Morris, who's a player agent, prominent player agent, recommended to Scotty that Scotty talk to me. Lawyer, guy involved in sports, guy that understands hockey, a natural fit. And for 3 years I worked off and on with Scotty because he was coaching Detroit. But in 2000, the Coaches Association got started, and it's never really flourished, but it was still a great experience for me and something that I'm proud to have been a part of. Now, one of the guys that I met when I was involved in forming the Coaches Association was Brian Burke. Brian was then working for the National Hockey League, and actually the reason it took us 3 years to get that off the ground is because Brian, in his role as Vice President of the National Hockey League, went out of his way to torpedo our efforts. And you know, from a competitive standpoint, I understood that's what he has to do. They didn't want an association, so Brian did what he could to sort of thwart it with some success. But as a result of that Coaches Association, I met a lot of great people and got clients out of it. Bruce Boudreau, now the coach of the Anaheim Ducks, formerly the coach of the Washington Capitals, is a close friend of mine and is a partner of mine in a company called Expertise Marketing, I'll get to in a moment. But John Anderson, another National Hockey League coach with the Atlanta Thrashers, a good friend of mine and client of mine. And I met a lot of people through that exercise. Now, in 2002, Don decided that he wanted to sell the Ice Dogs, which this was a bit of a difficult time for me because the Ice Dogs were kind of my baby. I had guided us through the expansion process, run the team as president, general manager, governor for 5 years. So it was heartbreaking to lose that team. But fortunately, I had met a lot of people in the hockey business, and the old expression, one door closes, another one opens. The Ice Dogs were sold in 2002, and in 2003, I reconnected with Mark and Dale Hunter. Mark, now the Director of Player Personnel with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Dale Hunter, the head coach of the London Knights, but I reconnected with Mark and Dale, and they asked me to come down to London and be their governor. Now, if you know Markendale, anything about Markendale, they're farm boys first and foremost. They're very passionate. They're as passionate about farming as they are about hockey. And they're as good at farming as they are at hockey. As hockey guys, they were thoroughbreds. But when it came to running a business of hockey, they hadn't had a lot of experience. And I've been running a team for 5 years. And I had a law degree, and whatever it was, they thought I would be a good candidate to add to the fold. So I said yes, even though I practice law in Toronto, I live in Oakville. London's 2 hours away basically, but you're not down there every day. But I said yes rather than say no, because I thought this could be a great opportunity. Little did I know that over the next 10 years, we would finish first in the Ontario Hockey League 6 times. We would win 3 Ontario Hockey League championships. We would win the Memorial Cup championship in 2005, and we would actually participate in 4 Memorial Cups. Now, I'm a guy that was barely a select quality player growing up in Ancaster as a kid, and now I'm on the ice. I'm having run the bid to host the Memorial Cup for London for 2005, and then when we were granted the rights to host it, I rolled over into chair of the Memorial Cup, and I basically committed 2 years of my life to planning and executing the Memorial Cup. But nothing was more gratifying other than getting married and the birth of kids. Nothing in my professional life was more gratifying than standing at center ice in May of 2005 with Corey Perry and Brandon Prust and Dan Girardi and Mark Mathot and David Boland and Mark Hunter and Dale Hunter and many other guys who have gone on to play in the National Hockey League, and host that trophy over your head in front of your home crowd. Like, it's today, I still think there isn't a day goes by that I don't think of that experience. Like, to see the confetti coming down and 10,000 people on their feet cheering, and you've reached the pinnacle of what's the hardest trophy in hockey to win. It was a tremendous experience. Once again, saw an opportunity with the London Knights, took it. They asked me to run the Memorial Cup. What did I know about running a Memorial Cup? I'd never done it before. Who has until they do it? And it was interesting. I was about 6 months into the planning for the Memorial Cup the first time when somebody said, have you ever done this before? And I thought, that's a great question. I'm glad no one's ever really asked that, because the answer is no. But I've been to Memorial Cups. I've been on the Board of Governors of our league at that point about 7 years. I knew what the mandate of the Commissioner, David Branch, was for hosting the event. I had a lot of ideas of how I thought we could make it better based upon ones that I've been to. And many people will tell you, until this year, that the 2005 Memorial Cup was the best Memorial Cup ever. It helped that it was a lockout year in the NHL, so all eyes were on London. It helped that Sportsnet was now broadcasting all the games in high def for the first time ever, and they were broadcasting them in prime time for the first time ever because there was no NHL that year. So a lot of factors combined, and we played Sidney Crosby in the final, and just for the record, Sidney Crosby was held without a shot on net by the London Knights for 5.5 periods over 2 games. How many NHL teams could lay claim to that? 5.5 periods, no shots on net. Sorry, Sid, we won it. So another thing that evolved during that time was I got involved in the American Bar Association, and I did that because there was no equivalent association for sports and entertainment lawyers in Canada. And through my involvement in that, I met a lot of great lawyers in the United States who did sports and entertainment work, who had clients that came to Canada, and as a result of my involvement there, I got invited actually to speak on 4 occasions. And just think about it for a second. Americans could care less really about anything Canadian by and large. And that's an overstatement, but you know what I mean. We're much more fascinated with them than they ever are about us. So for me to go to the American Bar Association is like the only Canadian who's on a panel speaking about something. I was very proud of that. But I met a lot of great people. And as a result of that, I got referrals for work that came to Canada. I did legal work for Johnny Lang, the blues guitarist who was the opening act for the Rolling Stones on one of their tours. I did work for Ansel and Douglas, who is the guy that wrote the song Who Let the Dogs Out. I'm sure you've all heard of that. He went from a bar band guy in Trinidad and Tobago to overnight being world famous and multimillionaire because everyone was playing that song. As corny as that song might have been, they were playing it at Shea Stadium for the Jets games. They were playing it on Honda commercials. They were playing it everywhere. So he became a client. I got hired to do work for the Detroit Lions. I got hired to do work for the Detroit Red Wings. This past year I spoke in Nashville, and I was speaking about ethical obligations of lawyers and commercial transactions involving sports entertainment transactions. Sounds pretty dry, you know, but somehow you have to bring these things to life. But at the end of it, and this is the point I'm making, at the end of it, a woman came up to me and said, I really appreciated what you had to say about ethical obligations. A lot of what you said is really relevant to the things that I do in my work life, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to sit here. And she introduced her name as Dina Lapolte. And I said, thank you, Dina, I'm very flattered. What do you do for a living? And she said, well, I used to be a musician, and then I was a band manager, but for the last 10 years I've been the personal lawyers for Steven Tyler and Aerosmith. And if we ever have anything in Canada, we're calling you. That's to me, Aerosmith happens to be one of my favorite bands of all time, but that to me is a classic example of how not saying no. I could say no, I'm not going to go to Nashville and speak at the American Bar Association gig, but I did say yes. I put in the time to prepare the topic that they wanted me to speak about, and if I only made a contact with Dina Lapolte, it was worth every moment, every minute that I spent preparing for that day. So those are the types of things that can happen when you get out there and get involved and network. All right, onward with the slideshow. This is sort of my professional life on one screen. By going to the American Bar Association functions, I realized that there was no equivalent, as I said, no equivalent organization or conference in Canada for sports entertainment lawyers. And there really isn't enough people practicing in sports entertainment law in Canada to have their own discrete conference in Canada. But what there is room for, there's a big sports management business in Canada. So Brian Burke and I, who I met through the Coaches Association originally, decided to form Primetime Sports and Entertainment, and for the last 7 years, we have hosted and organized what has now become the largest sports management conference in Canada. This year's event happens to be Monday, Tuesday of next week, and we have 70 speakers attending, over 400 people registered for the event. We have 14 panel discussions over 2 days, 5 keynote address speakers. Our keynotes are Bill Daly, Gary Bettman, Brendan Shanahan, Masai Ujiri, Brian Burke, and hopefully Mark Bergevin, who called yesterday to say, do you have room for me at your conference? You always have room for great speakers. So it's a great event, and I would encourage you, it's a little bit short notice for this year, but I would encourage you to think about it for next year. As a result of the Coaches Association, I also, as I mentioned earlier, met up with Bruce Boudreau. And I remember Bruce as a junior player and an NHL player. And we immediately hit it off when we met each other way back when. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we started Expertise Marketing, which is a sports event marketing company. And one of the things that we've done recently comes back to the London Knights. 2 years ago, the London Knights decided to once again bid on the Memorial Cup. We'd only had it in 2005. Well, we knew we were going to have a pretty good team. We've got a great rink. We've got great hotels. We had the experience of running it in 2005, so we bid on it again for 2014. We were granted the rights to host it. I was the chair of the bid. I was the chair of the Memorial Cup, and I spent, once again, the better part of 2 years planning it. The one thing I did not anticipate in the last 16 months of planning in earnest, because it's a massive event. It's not just, the games on the ice, it's the beer tent, it's the 18 recording artists that play at your event, it's the anthem singers, it's transportation, it's the fan fest, it's the Hockey Hall of Fame exhibit. There's a million moving parts when we put on an event like the Memorial Cup. The one thing I didn't contemplate is that my team, the host team, will lose all 3 games and effectively get sent home, as the term is, from your own tournament on Wednesday, which then raises the challenge of keeping your host committee and your volunteers pumped for an event that still has 5 days to run when your team's not in it. But we made it through, and we had what I think was even more successful Memorial Cup this past year in London, and I'm proud to have been involved in that. I regret the fact we didn't win it, but Edmonton was a great team, Guelph was a great team, and there's no shame in losing at that level. So, over the years, I've been to 4 Memorial Cups with the London Knights, and for a kid from Ancaster that was a very average player, I had a very strong competitive spirit, but skill set, I wasn't getting there. It's been a real thrill to be involved in all these activities. If you're interested next year in either coming to the conference or volunteering at the conference or working at the conference, you can go to primetimesport.ca and you can see what the conference is all about, and you can contact our event manager and volunteer to get involved next year. And I don't mean to make this look like a shameless plug for my business, but it is a sports management conference. You are sports management students, and we are talking about sports management. So in some ways, Primetime Sports Entertainment in this conference, I'll just go back to the brochure. You can't read it from here, but we have 70 speakers coming. I would say that 90% of those speakers are people that I know personally. And they're people that I've met over the years, the various activities I'm involved in, whether it be the ABA, the Coaches Association, the Ontario Hockey League, the Memorial Cups, or the practice of law. Most of those people that are coming starting Monday are friends of mine. And I feel very grateful to be in a position where I get to invite my friends to come and speak at the conference that I host. So, as I say, down the road, if it appeals to you to attend it, it's a great event, and that's the website for it. So, that's my story. I'm happy to share it with you. Thanks again, Dr. Stevens, for inviting me to come and speak. The sports industry the sports and entertainment industry is a blast. As I say, I get up every day. Some days I'm tired because I have long days, but this week I'm here today. I'm running the conference Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm attending the World Junior Championship Host Committee meeting in Toronto. Then I fly to Phoenix for 2 days for my own firm meetings. And then on Sunday, I'm the guest of Scott Mitchell, the president of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, for the Eastern Final. Like, every week is a blur, but every week's a blast. And all I can hope for you guys is that you have that kind of opportunity to enjoy that kind of experience, because every day is a blast for me. Thanks very much.
Questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Sorry, I went longer.
No.
So at this time, we'll open up to a few questions. If you guys have any questions, head over to the mic just beside the camera here and ask away.
I'm sorry, guys. I saw I went overtime there. I never look at my watch when I'm speaking, because I never want people to think like I'm in a hurry to get out of here. I'm not in a hurry to get out of here at all. But I did want to cover all that material.
Of the 10 successes that you brought up, what would you say is the most vital to have going forward?
Of the 10 skills? Of the 10?
Sorry.
I think they're all important. I won't say that they're all equally as important, but I think if there's, I'm going to say 2, okay? Know the business and get involved in network. That's the key. The other things are important too, but I can't pin it down to just one. Know the business, get involved, and network.
For those students who might be a little shy when it comes to networking, what would be some of the biggest tips you can provide people to put themselves out there and make those valuable contacts that you've been able to establish throughout your career?
That's a great question. And I must admit, I've never been accused of being shy. Go with a friend. To your first event, go with a friend. Because it is if you are shy and you're not comfortable networking, it's always best to have somebody there that's like-minded, that you can lean on and talk to. Nobody wants to be the wallflower who's standing there in the corner by themselves, so go with a friend. But introduce yourself to people. And maybe introduce yourself to people that look like they might be age peers or skill careers first. Like, if you're intimidated going over to speak to Gary Bettman, and I've met him 100 times, he scares me too, guys. But start small. Start with people that you look like you can approach and build your confidence. That's a good question. That's a skill in and of itself, actually, developing comfort with that.
Did you ever have an experience with like maybe you tried to network with someone and it turned out badly? And if so, how did you recover from that?
That's another good question. I guess there's people that I've wanted to network with who maybe weren't interested in networking with me, but I'm kind of philosophical about that. Like, my experience by and large has been that people are prepared to share their experiences with you. And if there's one person or two people out there that don't want to connect with you for whatever reason, then move on to somebody else. Because, you know, even though, for example, like Gary Bettman may be at the top of the pyramid for hockey, and if you don't have access to Gary, you can have access to a lot of other people. So don't give up. Move on to somebody else. But yeah, you know, there are people that won't give you the time of day, and I try to never be one of those people. I tell students, and I mean it, if you want to ever talk to me, come and meet me for coffee to talk about things, you know, my name and email and address and everything are all over the place, so you can track me down and come and meet me for coffee. Not everybody subscribed to that, but I think a lot of people will. Tim Lewicki, even with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, I think regularly meets with people that make contact with him, and that's great. Good question. Didn't I say at the beginning that students ask good questions?
So obviously, like throughout the presentation, you've done a lot, but more or less, like where you're at right now, like, what's moving forward? Like, where do you see yourself? Like, are you staying where you're at now? Do you have any future plans to go forward, move into different areas of the industry?
That's another good question. I get asked that regularly. And I remember E.J. McGuire asking me that back in 1997. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, E.J., like, I really have no idea. All I know is that I'm going to be doing something that interests me, that's challenging, that's rewarding. I don't know. Like, I've practiced law for a lot of years. If the right opportunity came along, and you know, my firm won't want me to say this publicly, but if the right opportunity came along outside of the law, I could go and do that and not miss a beat and not look back and worry about, geez, you know, I didn't prove myself or validate myself as a lawyer. There's a lot of great opportunities out there. There really are. There's a lot of things that all of us should aspire to want to do over and above what you're just doing now. But for me, I'll continue to practice law until somebody comes calling for that perfect position, but it may never come. And if it doesn't come, I don't have a problem with that because I've got a lot on the go. I'm still the governor of London Knights, still on the board of governors of the Ontario Hockey League, still running primetime expertise, still have a practice. The challenge most days is finding time to fit it all in. Really. I have a wife and 3 kids, beautiful dog, beautiful wife, beautiful dog. Thank you.
You've shared a lot of your successes with us today, and it's really interesting to hear. I was wondering if maybe you could share an example of when you weren't so successful and how you learned from that experience.
That's a great question too. I would say if there's one thing that I regret not kind of making a more positive mark on, it would have been the Mississauga Ice Dogs, which are now the Niagara Ice Dogs. We had an expansion team. We didn't get a lot of help from the league. I'm not going to tell the story about why we were so bad, but when we entered the league as an expansion team in 1998, we were only allowed, like every team in the league was allowed to protect 18 skaters and 2 goalies. What does that mean in practical terms? You are picking from among guys that if a game is being played today, this guy's not playing. So when we played our first game up in Kingston, we were all full of enthusiasm. We had 5 guys who played in the league but were unprotected, and we had 14 rookies in the lineup, 13 rookies in the lineup, and 2 goalies that had been castaways from other teams. And we got our clock cleaned that night and just about every night that first year. So a regret I have is that I think we underestimated the order of magnitude of what it took to be successful, quite frankly. And I think to a degree, and I think Don Cherry would say this too, that there were so many things we could have done differently. We could have scouted harder, we could have hired better coaches, we could have drafted better. There were guys that we had in our lineup that we let go that went on to do great things with other teams. All of which comes back to like being prepared, knowing your business. We underestimated the order of magnitude of what it took to successfully run an Ontario Hockey League team. And it didn't help that we were handed, an expansion plate that was full of unprotected players from other teams in the league. They were great kids. They're all great kids. Like in 17 years of being involved in the Ontario Hockey League, I could count on one hand the kids that I didn't like. They're all, by and large, been great kids, and many of them have gone on to great successes.
both in hockey and outside the role of hockey, but I would have liked to have had more success with the Ice Dogs, and I regret that we sold the team. Like, Don wanted to sell, and part of the deal that we had was that if Don wanted to sell, I would sell too. And people said to me, well, why didn't you just buy the team? Well, that wasn't an option because that wasn't the deal we had. And I would have been faced, quite frankly, with the dilemma of, do I sell my shares for the highest price ever paid for a junior hockey team, which it was then, or do I buy all the other shares at the highest price paid for any junior hockey team? I didn't have the financial wherewithal to do it. But for a year, I kind of felt out of the loop. And when I met up with Mark and Dale Hunter in Nashville at the draft in 2003, and they invited me to come on as their governor and bid on the Memorial Cup, it was a rejuvenation. But the success of the Ice Dogs is something that I really wish we'd done a better job with.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you, Trevor. We're going to have one more question, and then we can wrap up. I know you've been going for a while. We really appreciate it, so this is the last question.
No problem.
How did there a time when you really thought you couldn't do something? And how did you get back on your feet and what motivated you to keep going?
I'm sure there has been. I'm by and large, I'm a pretty confident person, and I have faith in my own abilities to figure stuff out. Like, I can't practice dentistry, medicine, engineering, accounting, or any other occupation, but I think I can figure a lot of things out if you apply yourself and learn about what it is you need to do. I guess I would come back to the Ice Dogs. I served for 2 years as general manager of the team, and that is not something that you can do on a part-time basis, which is what I was doing. And when we sold the team and the reins of being a general manager were taken over by somebody else because they appointed their own general manager, of course, that was probably good for the team. So that was a time where I felt I didn't do the kind of job that I needed to do, because it really is a full-time job, and I was doing it part-time, trying to practice law and balance a lot of other obligations. Another great question. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your day. Make the best of your 4 years here at Brock, and I look forward to seeing you all in a rink or a music hall sometime soon.